Yo, what's going on, guys? Mush back at it with another video. Of course, we are coming up on the release of Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2, and I'm pretty excited about it. This is probably the most excited I've been for a Call of Duty in quite a while, and that's probably because, like, all my boys are excited for it, and they're all picking it up, so inherently speaking, I'm just excited that I'm going to be able to get into a multiplayer game that all my friends are picking up too, and that's kind of where the fun in Call of Duty lies. And of course, last year, Vanguard didn't do much for me. I dropped my 70 bucks on it. Much more excited for MW2 this year, and come tomorrow, if you do pre-order the game, you'll have access to the campaign. Dig me some Call of Duty campaign. Ultimately, most of us are gonna spend our time in the multiplayer, but if you're picking up the game on PC, that's what we're here to talk about today. We got system requirements, and credit to the team over at Activision Infinity Ward that have cooked up these system requirements, because we got 4 tiers of system requirements, which I always like to see. A lot of games do go for the 2-tier model. Sony has done a really good job in doing 4 or 5 tiers for their system requirements, and here we go. Modern Warfare 2, we got minimum requirements, recommended requirements, competitive requirements, and Ultra 4K requirements. Like how they broke that down as well. So we'll run through them one by one, and I'll give you guys my overall thoughts as we go along. Okay, so minimum, Intel Core i3 6100 or a Core i5 2500K, Sandy Bridge 2500K, still rocking solid, or an AMD Ryzen 3 1200. That's a minimum CPU requirement, 8 gigs of RAM, and then you'll also need a GTX 960 or an RX 470. Relatively tame, all things considered there. As we move up to recommended, the recommended specs to run at 60 frames per second in most situations, with all options set to high. So this is probably where a lot of you guys want to fall in line with. Intel Core i5 6600K or a Core i7 4770. That's a Skylake i5, and then a Haswell i7, if I got my nomenclature down packed at this point, or an AMD Ryzen 5 1400. 12 gigabytes of RAM is recommended, not too surprising there. Higher end games these days, you more often than not see 16 gigabytes of RAM recommended. Here we got 8 at minimum and 12 at recommended, and then a GTX 1060 or an AMD Radeon RX 580. Those are like 2 of the premier mid-range GPUs that people picked up probably pre-pandemic, and they're still rocking with them. It's a little bit harder to get a GPU, so I know a ton of people that are rocking a 1060 or a 580, so if you're on that level, happy to be you, because you're at recommended tier with MW2. You're looking to play the game at 60 frames per second. You should be able to do that pretty solidly. Now we go to competitive. The competitive specs to run at a high frame FPS for use with a high refresh rate monitor. So this is your 144 hertz monitor. A lot of people live and die by this when it comes to competitive first-person shooters. I think more often than not, most people, the casuals, and, most consumers are just good with 60 frames per second. But, if you want to get super into it, 144 hertz, especially for games like CSGO, games like COD, it's something that I appreciate. I have a 144 hertz monitor and I love it. But nonetheless, let's talk about it. CPU, i7 8700K or a Ryzen 7 1800X, so relatively high-end CPUs there. 16 gigabytes of RAM for competitive, and then a RTX 3060 Ti or a Radeon RX 5700 XT. More recent GPU, so take that for what you will. Those are 8 gigabyte video cards. A 3060 Ti is definitely a beefy GPU, to say the least, and that was one of those GPUs that its price got spiked up because of everything going on, GPUs being bought out. You guys get the drift. 5700 XT also went for a premium price at a while. Both of those GPUs at this point have calmed down a little bit in terms of price point, but for a long time, they were relatively up there in price. Lastly, Ultra 4K. Now, what they specify for Ultra is the Ultra specs to run the game at a high FPS and 4K resolution. So I would imagine that this is much like the competitive in that it's a high frame rate at 4K. So we're talking above 60, and based on these system requirements, that's what it's speaking to me on. An Intel Core i9 9900K or an AMD Ryzen 9 3900X, 16 gigabytes of RAM, and then you're gonna need an RTX 3080 or a Radeon RX 6800 XT. For Ultra 4K, just fall a little bit short on that CPU requirement. I have a Ryzen 7 3700. I do have an RTX 3080, but 4K is not what I do anyway, so I don't even know why I care. I have a 1440p 144 hertz monitor, which I think for higher end consumers, I'd like to consider myself a higher end consumer. Oh yeah, baby, I'm a baller. I got a 3080, so I would, let's say it's around there. I like the 1440p 144 hertz getup myself. I think 4K, especially at 144, that just becomes a little bit pushing it, even with a premier GPU like 3080. I mean, you look at a game like a Plague Tale, Requiem, excuse me, I was about to say Innocence, but Requiem, yeah, that game is bringing PCs to their knees. But nonetheless, I think this is pretty tame, all things considered. Like, I think people are really going to be happy with that recommended tier, given that the 1060 and 580, yeah, at this point, what are they? 4 generations old, but you gotta essentially throw, like, 3 years out. 2020, 2021, and 2022, just throw them in the gutter, because a lot of people were not upgrading their GPUs, especially if they're on a budget. You gotta just throw those years as, like, buy years, and, a lot of people still rocking 1060s and 580s. At this point, you're probably thinking about upgrading if you are sitting in the 1060 580 tier, but man, if you're playing MW2, if that's like the game you're gonna play for the next year, if you like to play your lower key titles, lower end games, and even play at lower settings, this is fine. And for MW2, you should be killing it as far as performance goes. They also do have a note section. Specs are valid for product at launch and may be updated in the future. All specifications require a broadband connection and DirectX 12 compatibility. Additional storage space may be required for mandatory game updates, which reminds me, 72 gigabytes at launch, and then the high-res assets cache, that they note up to 32 gigabytes or Ultra 4K up to 64 gigabytes, so bear that in mind as well. The high-res assets is optional disk space that can be used to stream high-resolution assets, and only Intel and AMD processors are supported at this time. So there is your breakdown of MW2. I know everybody that pre-ordered the game is looking to jump into the campaign. I'm actually happy to see that there's a little bit of buzz around the campaign, and I think it was incredibly strategic and smart for Activision to do this play the campaign 1 week early gimmick, because that also brings more attention onto the campaign. I know so many people that a lot of years, I literally got roasted for playing the COD campaign by some of my boys, but now they're like, alright, it's out a week early, let me just jump into it and play through it, and you get benefits on the multiplayer game. I think that'll just bring attention to the COD campaign, and the COD campaign's like, guys, if you play them, they're usually pretty darn good. Like, I have to say, I usually have a pretty good time with it. Would I say that it alone is worth the price of admission? Absolutely not, but they're mindless fun a lot of times, and sometimes they're pretty gripping narratively as well, and I expect the same out of MW2. But that's gonna do it for me. That is your full breakdown of the system requirements. Nothing too crazy here, pretty happy with it overall, and if you played the beta, you probably have a good idea how it's gonna run on your machine. From what we saw out of the beta as well, Steam Deck gonna be running it pretty well as well. But that's gonna do it for me. Let me know all your thoughts in the comment section down below, and I will catch you guys in the next one. Peace out. Hey, what's going on, guys? Mush here again. Hope you enjoyed the video. As you guys might know, YouTube's notification system is sometimes a little bit wonky, even if you're subscribed to the channel. Maybe you're not abundantly aware that I uploaded a video. To remedy that situation, make sure you hit the bell notification button. This way, whenever I upload a new video, and I try to upload as consistently as possible, you will be notified directly of the upload, and you can watch it as soon as it goes live. I would really appreciate if you guys hit that button so you can stay up to date with all of the content I'm posting. But as always, guys, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace out.